Here's an article about a new bird die-off. Hundreds of birds fall from the sky in Draper, Utah. This is just from last night, January 30th, 2018. And essentially, people were just driving down the road and hundreds of birds just started falling from the sky. And of course, they always have these odd cover-up stories, fireworks or this or that. And the police spokesman came out and said that they think that the birds just flew into the side of a huge vehicle and killed themselves, which is ridiculous because there's actual testimony from the people on the roads who saw them falling from the sky for no reason. So I'm going to play that testimony now or that news footage now, and then I want to get back to what we think is causing this, which are these directed energy weapons, which we did a lot of videos about during the wildfires out in California and the West Coast. And how all of that, and I also did a video with a whistleblower that was an hour, him giving his testimony of the companies, and actually gave the company names and the project names of them testing these different frequency technologies over cities. And so we think that's what is causing these birds to fall out of the sky. But I'll get back to that. Let's go to the news footage.
It was another overcast and windy winter day in Draper when a not-so-normal thing happened.
As I was driving, these birds just were falling out of the sky.
Lacey Brown was one of the people who saw things firsthand.
They were all on the ground right around here and along the roadway. They were just falling out of the sky like leaves.
So one of the things that these events always have in common is either there's no trauma or they have trauma that is the same in every single bird. Like in one of the bird die-offs, they found that all of the birds were bleeding from their eyes. In another one, they found that all of their livers were exploded. And we know that same in the human body, every single organ resonates at a different frequency. And we can detect that now. It's just like putting electrodes on your head and, during sleep and go, oh, look, their brain frequency changed to theta frequency or whatever. So this is provable that every single organ resonates at a different frequency. So whatever is going on that is causing these birds to fall out of the sky, they're either showing no trauma, so all of the other excuses don't, besides some type of energy weapon or something, don't make any sense. They show no disease, no virus, no anything, and people watch them. They just instant death. They fall right out of the sky, instant death. So they either have no trauma or the trauma is specific, and it's also species specific. We see the same thing in the fish die-offs and stuff. It's not that everything in the ocean dies. It'll be just starfish. It'll be like this. When it's a bird, it's just one species of bird. So again, everything is frequency specific. So whatever these energy weapons are or experiments that are going on around us or high-tech war or whatever is happening is clearly frequency related because it's always very specific. It doesn't kill everything in the sky. It doesn't kill everything on the ground. It's like they're beaming a particular frequency and just the animals or just the organs or whatever in that frequency are experiencing the trauma or the death or the confusion or whatever the symptoms are. I don't think I'm going to spend a lot of time going over a lot of that information again right here in this video because I want to get to a lot more of these mass die-offs. So what I will do is show you these. These are the videos that I did on them before. This is Whistleblower Tells All. Frequency experiments on unwitting American cities, and he names the cities. Seattle comes to mind, was a big one. There were a lot of frequency experiments over Seattle, and that was the corporation that he worked with, was out on the West Coast. Then here's another video. This is California Firestorms, blue lights in the sky, 60 California wildfires out of nowhere, directed energy. And this has eyewitness testimony, a gentleman that lives out there in California, and he was talking about seeing these laser type lights coming out of the sky and that this thing kicked up out of nowhere and started in multiple places at the same time. So this one has the eyewitness accounts type stuff. And this one, California Firestorms, pictures and video footage, microwaves, 5G, directed energy. This one has more of the photographic evidence showing how fires, incinerated things and the temperatures that they would have to get to incinerate those things to like dust, and then nothing around them like trees or anything were even on fire, that type of stuff. So that we talk a lot about directed energy in there. And then I think there's one more that might be useful. Here it is, this one right here in the middle. Weather wars, chemtrails, Hurricane Irma, Harvey, X10 solar flare, 8.1 earthquake in Mexico. This was right around the time of all of the hurricanes and earthquakes and all of that. And it's a weather wars video, and it's based on, it was a live stream I did, 38 minutes, and I talked about Steve Coyle's book where he lists all of the patents and all of the technology going back to Tesla's era for earthquake creation. And what was it, Operation Popeye, where they did the cloud seeding on the Ho Chi Minh Trail to flood the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which we used in war. We used actual weather control in warfare, in military warfare. So there's quite a bit of information in that one too, the weather wars, if you're looking for patents and actual, the technology and scientific information. Now, they always want to lead you to believe, we hear the major cover-up thing they say is, oh, well, this has always happened. It's always been this way. And no, it has not always been this way. I mean, think about the people who are 100 years old and still living here on planet Earth, and they can tell you it was not this way when we were growing up. And anyway, there's science to back that up. Report hundreds of millions of Pacific salmon missing, presumed dead. Government issues emergency order along the U.S. West Coast. Japan suffering historic collapse. And so anyway, here's tons of articles from all through last year on all different species of fish. So there were emergency orders issued. A lot of people said it had to do with Fukushima and the radiation poisoning over in the Pacific. This was also on the East Coast, and this was also in the Gulf of Mexico and all of that. So this is not just a Fukushima or Pacific Ocean thing. What they do, when they do these tests every year, and they throw out their nets and they bring in the salmon, and they do, they do all these all these tests on them and size them, and they tag them and everything. Well, one of these events was scheduled several months ago, about a year ago now, and they threw their nets out. It took them 4 drags before they got one salmon. They said it has never happened in all of the history of us doing these types of tests and keeping these types of records and tagging the fish in the ocean and all of that. It has never, ever happened. So let's go over here. This is the go-to guy on the list. He's made all these. This is just this year. We're still in January. Look at all these. These are all the mass die-offs just this year. And then you can go down. He's collected all the lists, 2011, 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16. And so you can go there and see all the mass die-offs. He has them listed by country, by species, and by the number found dead. So, you can see. So we've been seeing this trend increase over the last several years, and lots of channels are doing stories on it. So don't get turned off just because I'm referencing a website that says the end times on it, because you need to be aware he's put a lot of time in compiling all of these. So we have an easy record, an easy resource to reference this type of thing. But from my point of view, I don't make any apologies. I know exactly what's going on, and many of you do too. So, the Bible's clear that it says a third of the beasts of the field will die, and a third of the fish in the ocean. And this is one of the judgments, one of the birth pains as we get closer and closer. Here's Hosea 4, 1 through 3. Hear the word of the Lord, ye children of humanity. For the Lord hath a controversy with the inhabitants of the land, because there is no truth, no mercy, nor knowledge of God in the land. By swearing and lying and killing and stealing and committing adultery, they break out, and blood toucheth blood. Therefore shall the land mourn, and every one that dwelleth therein shall languish, with the beasts of the field, with the fowls of the air, yes, the fishes of the sea also shall be taken away. Then Revelation 11:18. And this is what we've been talking about, what's going on the cabal side, more on the political and the war and what humans are doing side. Revelation 11:18. And the nations were angry, and thy wrath has come, and the time of the dead and the judgment, and thou should give rewards to thy servants the prophets, and to the saints, that's the body of Christ, and them that fear the Lord's name, small and great, and should destroy them which destroy the earth. So that's the deal with the judgments is, the cabal has to be destroyed. These people using these energy weapons who have messed everything up, from the radiation to the biological warfare they use with the viruses they turn loose, and all of this. The whole biosphere is all screwed up because of everything they've done and all of their efforts for war and greed and everything they've done. Now look what we have. So anyway, here's the list of the animal die-offs. 39 known mass death events in 23 countries, and that is just in January. That's 1 month. 1 month. This is the mass animal die list right here. So, and there's the previous lists, and this is the website. I'll put the link below for anyone who wants to go take a look at that. Now, I mentioned the energy weapons and stuff earlier, but clearly that's only one tactic of warfare, and that's only one thing we face. We have this biological warfare that's very serious. Remember back in 2001, these anthrax attacks, it killed 5 people and infected 17 others. And now part of these animal die-offs are these strange diseases. Zombie deer disease is spreading, killing deer and elk and all of that. We're seeing that type of thing. And among humans, now this is interesting. This is scary stuff. Now, among humans, we always see the CDC bringing out all this every flu season. Oh, you know, this is the worst. It's the worst. It's the worst. Of course, they're pushing vaccines a lot. Most of the time, it's Big Pharma trying to sell vaccines that don't work, because there's a different strain of flu introduced every single year. So they make the flu vaccine off of a strain that was from previous years. So it's completely ineffective from year to year to year against the new strains, but people will buy anything that you put on the boob tube and tell them they have to have or they'll die. But this year, the big narrative is, see, this article right here on CNN is from yesterday, January 30th, 2018, right here. If it's not the flu, you might be sick because of this virus. So you've probably seen this story a lot lately. Now, when you open the articles, you'll see it's the same symptoms, you know, runny nose, sore throat, breathing problems, fever, headache, diarrhea, all of the flu-like symptoms, but these are caused by adenoviruses. Adenoviruses. It's the same thing over here, adenovirus infection, and it talks about getting pink eye and all these different things, muscle spasms, all sorts of things caused by these adenoviruses. Now, the reason that I want to point out adenovirus is because that is what they use for genetic engineering. When you hear about them treating the gene therapy where they hollow out a virus, and then they insert little segments of DNA into that so that then they infect a person, or, you know, introduce it to a person's system, and that will replicate that DNA strand into your DNA. And, you know, they've used it for cures for diabetes, and they hope to use it for gene therapy to cure all kinds of things. And well, now we have the CRISPR-Cas9 technology also. So, you know, they'll be working hand in hand. But my point with that is, and again, I can't go into all of that in this video, it'll get too long, but here's a video that I did a month ago. Are they putting DNA in us? Viruses, men in black, biological warfare, aliens, Nephilim. And this video touches on how it has the actual talks at the conventions and at the universities from these doctors explaining how 8% of the human genome at present, in today's era, 8% of the human genome is DNA that has been transplanted by viruses over the generations. So it is changing our human genetic makeup. And if you go back to a lot of these historical records on things like the Black Plague, you'll find some really weird stories. Like they say, before the Black Plague broke out, they saw men dressed in black cloaks walking through the villages and on the outskirts of villages, spraying, they said, spraying things from a tube. That's what they actually said. So that's recorded in history. And then we had the Black Plague breakout. But anyway, the science, the more important part is this explains all of the science and how they use the adenoviruses. They use the adenoviruses to transplant snippets of DNA in gene therapy. And that's exactly what we're seeing in these quote unquote flu seasons, are all of these adenoviruses. And I'm not saying it is biological warfare. I'm just saying we need to be aware that, you know, we believe every single thing they tell us as if, you know, it's the gospel. And it's quite possible that these viruses that we experience every year are being dumped on us. We're just told, oh, there is no cure. It just morphs, even though we have, you know, even though we have the vaccines and we have the Theraflu and we have all that. No, we have to have viruses dumped on us every single year. Even though we have the cure, it doesn't matter because it's different. It just naturally happens that way. It just naturally changes, a new virus every single year. And, you know, we've had the conspiracy theories about, was the AIDS virus created and introduced and things like that. But we don't think about the smaller viruses that we experience as as a human population, as a human civilization every single year. And I think we need to be aware of that this could be biological warfare. And I know there's a few of you right now are, oh gosh, she's gone too far. Here go the wild conspiracy theories. But if you can't wrap your mind around the fact that our own government and other governments would do these types of things to people, then you need a reality check, because right here, the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, this is a fact. This actually happened. They took African American citizens, didn't even tell them they had syphilis, told them they had bad blood. They withheld the penicillin from them when they could cure it and did not, and let these people be maimed and let them die just so they could study the effects. They told them it'd be 6 years. They study, or 6-month study that these people signed up for, and they monitored them for 40 years. And this is a fact. Here's a couple of clips of President Clinton coming out and making public apologies for these things, not just the Tuskegee syphilis experiment where our own government experimented on and essentially murdered its own citizens. But then after that apology, I'll play another presidential speech where Clinton apologized again for another one where they were doing radiation experiments and MK Ultra experiments, and the whistleblowers can't hear. The whistleblower was Peter Buxton that came out and was the whistleblower on this. But anyway, then you had the MK Ultra experiments and the radiation experiments on people, and he came out. I mean, this is admitted. These are not theories. The government has actually come out and given financial settlements to these victims and admitted it, and the president of the United States making public apologies and all of that. So anyway, for those of you who think this is a theory or a conspiracy theory, here's a couple of clips of the president.
To the wives and family members, the children and the grandchildren, I say what you know. No power on earth can give you back the lives lost, the pain suffered, the years of internal torment and anguish. What was done cannot be undone, but we can end the silence. We can stop turning our heads away. We can look at you in the eye and finally say, on behalf of the American people, what the United States government did was shameful. And I am sorry. But it is a very, very important piece of America's history, and it will shape America's future in ways that will make us a more honorable, more successful, and more ethical country. Thousands of government-sponsored experiments did take place at hospitals, universities, and military bases around our nation. The goal was to understand the effects of radiation exposure on the human body. While most of the tests were ethical by any standards, some were unethical, not only by today's standards, but by the standards of the time in which they were conducted. They failed both the test of our national values and the test of humanity. Informed consent means your doctor tells you the risk of the treatment you are about to undergo. In too many cases, informed consent was withheld. Americans were kept in the dark about the effects of what was being done to them. The deception extended beyond the test subjects themselves to encompass their families and the American people as a whole. For these experiments were kept secret, and they were shrouded not for a compelling reason of national security, but for the simple fear of embarrassment, and that was wrong.
And that's just two quick examples that they got busted on from whistleblowers, and the proof was so profound that the government had to step up and apologize. Now, I've got notebooks with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of examples of this, where they have tested everything on unwitting citizens, from directed energy weapons to all of these different viruses, bacteria, mustard gas, radiation, mind control techniques, over and over and over. They've put helicopters in the sky and sprayed entire communities to test stuff. This is factual. This is stuff that, these are not conspiracy theories. I mean, look, this is known, because these things have always happened and they have not stopped. We are still at war with this cabal, and they have no scruples. They do not care about the sanctity of life one bit. But I'm going to make a video about those hundreds and hundreds, but I don't have time to do it this week. So what I'm going to do is forward you over to Lisa Haven's channel. She did a video a while back, a year or so ago, Stomach Turning Massacre of Millions Happening Now, Human Experimentation and 100% Proof. And she goes through for about 20 minutes or so and just lists several of these off. So I'll put that link below in the description box.
Years later, the United States issues an apology for this, both linked below. The University of Pennsylvania via Joseph Stokes infects 200 women with viral hepatitis just to study the disease. 1950, 1953, Project Bluebird, also known as Project Artichoke. I will have a document for that as well. They use hypnosis, interrogation, mind control, drugs, that kind of stuff to study the human brain, how to control it. 1950, 1953, chemtrail, basically chemical cloud. The U.S. Army releases chemical clouds over 6 American and Canadian cities. Many people report becoming ill. 1915, the Department of Defense begins plans to detonate nuclear weapons in the desert and monitor the downwinds. Let's detonate a nuclear weapon so we can monitor the population of where that downwind is going. Outrageous.
Okay, that being said, I don't want to imply that all of these types of things happen by an organized government or by the US government. A lot of these were done by rogue scientists and rogue elements like we have now in the cabal. It was just people at universities working with intelligence agencies and things like that. Small groups of people, and everything's compartmentalized. So not everybody was aware of everything. And even well outside of governments, we know that just like the anthrax attacks, where that was stolen from a specific lab, it was a guy who worked in one of these labs, but the lab and the pharmaceutical company and everything weren't necessarily in on it. It can be just an individual, which is also something that we saw in some of the West Coast forest fires. There were actually 2 young Russian men were arrested, caught red-handed, starting a fire out on the West Coast. So it can be individuals and it can be rogue agencies. It doesn't have to be entire governments. And it certainly, even though these 2 examples that I gave with Bill Clinton were about the United States government, it certainly does not have to be the United States government. We could be in some high-tech war that we're just not privy to. And that could explain a lot of these anomalies and phenomena that we don't understand why this is happening and that's happening, but maybe we're at war. Take chemtrails, for instance. We all just assume that they're poisoning us, or, their excuse, their cover a story is that it's for global warming, that it has barium, aluminum, and strontium in these sprays, and then that's supposed to reflect back some of the sun's heat back up into space. But what if these chemtrails done by our own government are something they're doing to protect us against an enemy we don't even know we have? What if there are satellites beaming these frequency technologies down on our cities? And what if our government is flying over us, spraying this barium and stuff to bounce those frequencies, to bounce that energy back up? Maybe this is some high-tech war, and these chemtrails we see them spraying over our cities are our defense against some other nations, some other cabals technology that they are beaming down on our citizens. And I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying we need to have an open mind, because we have been kept so in the dark that our reality is so far removed from what is really going on. I think a lot of times we jump to conclusions, and Either way, I don't think chemtrails are good, even if they are to protect us, because they do poison us, and they poison the entire food chain and all of this. It's terrible stuff. But what if we're in some high-tech war and we're in a corner? If you go and watch that whistleblower video where that guy talks about these frequency experiments, they did entire masses of people, entire blocks of people they would put into depression and stuff, because certain frequencies cause it. We've known this with music for a long time. It's all in those videos, those frequency videos. And look at the United States of America. Look what's going on. Everybody's on antidepressants. Everybody. The children are on Ritalin. They can't concentrate. Autism is at an all-time high. And what is autism? It's a higher frequency. That's why those children they seem to have a communication around dolphins and higher frequency, animals with higher frequency communication. So anyway, we don't know. We don't know what's going on. I'm just saying that's something to kick around. But as far as them using chemtrails or putting things in the air to experiment on us, and don't forget the mystery gelatinous goo that fell from the skies over Oakville, Washington. And the people who came into contact with it got very sick, and they had flu-like symptoms and all of that. And it wasn't just an airplane going over. One, it wasn't died like waste from. I mean, one, airplanes don't just go over and dump their porta toilets over cities. But two, it wasn't blue. That waste is always dyed blue. This is a clear gelatinous something. And it didn't just rain over the city once and it was over. It rained over the city several times over the course of several weeks. And when they sent the samples off, that one lady did preserve a sample of it, and they sent it off, and it had, they found that it had white blood cells in it. Human white blood cells. Let me see if I can find that. Rain contained human white blood cells. Here's an article. I'll put the links below. And the Oakville, Washington one, that's the one they made famous or whatever. But it's happened all over. Several cities have been exposed to this. Here's West Virginia. That one was New York that I just showed. That blob was New York. Alabama, it happens all over. And they put it up. These are people from their homes doing this. These are the ones that never make the news. So something's going on. I'm not saying that I know what that is, but I just thought this is a puzzle piece, and I would throw it in here because we know with the chemtrails and all of this stuff, the Operation Solar Shield and all of these things that have come out, that they certainly are not above raining down things on our cities. So I know this is a hard pill to swallow. Nobody wants to believe there's this kind of evil in the world, and that people, that these things that we see around us, a lot of them might be done by evil people, by this cabal. But at some point, we have to believe our own eyes. How much are we going to dismiss? Are we going to continually dismiss all of these mysteries and anomalies? We hear these mystery sounds. Oh gosh, the mystery sounds all over, trumpets in the air. It sounds like mechanical grinding and sounds and frequencies and trumpets in the sky above us, over cities. We see these mystery beams of light coming down everywhere. The Michigan meteor that just happened, there are all those photos of these mystery beams of light coming down. Oh, it's an anomaly, it's a mystery. No, it's not. The word anomaly is just something we use to make an excuse for the fact that what we see with our own eyes does not fit what they have told us. The narrative, the official narrative, the paradigm they've got us living in. When we see anomalies, those are evidence to the contrary. That is our proof. That's our proof that what they have told us is not true. But there's hope. There's hope. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer about it. There is hope. But that hope and that resurrection and that restoration and that redemption only comes from one place. There isn't any of this hippy-dippy New Age dogma. Oh, that's your truth and I got my truth and truth is relative. No, there's just truth. There's truth and there's lies. There's good and there's evil. This is Galatians 6:8. The Word of God says, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. Whatever a man sows, he will reap in return. The one who sows to please his flesh, from the flesh he will reap destruction." But the one who sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit he will reap eternal life. Let us not grow weary in well-doing, for in good time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Don't give up, folks. There's hope. The very last book in the Bible is called the Revelation, the revealing, when everything comes to light, the revealing of the truth, the revealing, the revelation of Jesus Christ.